Alright, for my last set of videos, I'm going to be switching us to collages starting with the background, which are a little bit different to think about, because when you start with just what you're cutting, what you're picking out, you can do whatever you want. But if you start with an image, you need to pay attention to that image and use its strengths to build up what you want to do with it. So I'm going to start with a small one, just a postcard I have here, and the things I'm going to pay attention to are the direction of motion in the image. So everything is moving this way. It's going down these wires, up this train track. Everything is set up so that it's following a direction. And then the colors are following a rough blue and green comparison. And because it's already got a color scheme, I don't want to go too far out of it. And to explain a lot of good ways to deal with color schemes, I'm going to go ahead and actually use something I clipped out of one of my books, and that is examples of painters' color schemes, and they're all just drawings of chickens going from very one color to another color. And so what we can do, see, we've got the yellows and the greens and the blues, so those are similar to these. That's where our color scheme is, and these are interesting and they're fun to play with, and what they allow us to do is contrast with that. But if instead we stick in that range, these are going to fit into the image. And the other thing that you have to pay attention to is size. What will even fit on your image? The reason why I picked out these is they are very small. Now this isn't something that's complicated at all, but I just am using it as an example of what you can do. So why don't we, for example, cut that out and see that the same colors that apply in this apply to the original image, and we can start building off of these shapes and colors. We've got this nice little row of colors that we can use as well. So let's see what that gives us. We've got more greens and blues that we can use here. I think this in particular looks like a good example, these two, of the sky and the trees. And so those are the kinds of things you want to pay attention to. This one is only going to be a couple of pieces, but the idea is that with these couple of pieces we can come up with what a basic image that fills in and makes use of the image underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting these pieces. I'm using scissors for these detail cuts because in this situation with the white borders we always want to be cutting a little bit inside of the line anyway. We're not trying to make it stand out with outlines. Instead, we're using this as an example of how to blend with our cutouts. If we use a similar color scheme, then we can choose to bring out different parts of the image. So here, now this fits much more exactly within what we have, and I am going to continue and layer these so that they contrast with each other as well as the background image. And there's not too much to look at here, but once I'm finished, this will allow a pretty tiny and fun example of how to use things. I will send these as holiday cards or to friends, write notes on them, and just use this as a way, just like I did in the beginning of these process videos, create ways to play with the resources I have. And one of the things that's harder right now living in a pandemic is we're not able to access as many stores that would have books that we want to use, or be able to get as many pieces as we can. So that's why I wanted to show first that you can work with what you have, and then what comes after is just what you can build once you have more time to collect pieces of material that you like. And what I've decided that I want to do with this image is use these sets of colors to accentuate that movement of the train and the picture, and then I'm going to stick those painted chickens over the top of it to bring it back into the original color scheme, because these have more colors than what we started with, and we don't want that to distract too much from the whole. We want it to look like it's a part of it, but not the only part of it. We want it to make what we're building richer and prettier. And one fun thing about using very similar images is that you don't need to give them as much space underneath each other. They can overlap a lot, and you still know what the differences are between those images. It allows people to see through parts of what you're making. Sorry for cutting off screen for a moment, but this is my plan. We are going to start here, bring out the color as we go farther away from the mountains, and build up around our image so that we get this effect of surrounding and following the train. But because I don't want to fully obscure with the white there, what I'm going to do is start taking away, stretch this out so that it doesn't get in the way. So I'm going to take this, cut out here. It's going farther into the background, so I want it to be smaller. And you can use perspective even if it's not perfect, because you have the ability to change the size of anything you're using just by cutting it. So and then this one I'm going to do midway. I already started doing it a little bit smaller, but it will just roughly be a little bit thicker than the one in between, but a little bit smaller than the one above. And instead of taking away all of those, I'm only going to take away these last two. Now, what I will do is go ahead, line everything up, and use this over here as a way to bring color in to this side, to bring things away from this base image, but keep it all still incorporated. And so now that this continues that whole direction, I'm going to go ahead and glue it and then get into the main exercise. And I'm using up all of my glue. Alright. So again, we work from the top down. Because the top is what anchors everything between it and the bottom. You don't want to start at the bottom, because then every time you glue something you have to start over and make sure everything matches up. If you start at the top, you have the smallest part of it to glue first, and then as you build around it, you can glue larger and larger pieces without having to worry about whether or not the top will fall apart when you put it on. The mistakes that you make in the foreground are much more noticeable than the mistakes you make in the background. So you want to make sure that you're accounting for what needs to be most precise and what needs to be the least precise. So, starting by framing that one, and then again, as I've shown, I'm sure many times before, just walking the paper along the glue stick to allow for it to completely surround. Now, when I'm doing something like this, that's a bit more light-hearted, I like to use words as well, or strange pictures, to make sure that it's a fun image, because usually I'm just sending these to friends or people that I've met with my collage work. And so this is not something that I want to take so long that I can't create something. So now what I'm looking for is just a good set of words to use. And so what I will use to pick for that is words that, or magazines that have lots of text and imagery in them and not much articles, because all of the letters in here are bigger, and so they allow for more creative use of letters instead of creative use of images. There we go. And very simple. Something that's not serious, because again, one of the most important parts of collage is that it's playful, that you can come up